Today we're going to look at what's new in the RadGridView Q3 2011 release. RadGridView is part of the Telerik RAD controls for Windows Forms control suite. RadGridView is a grid component developed on top of Telerik's Presentation Framework, which provides a combination of performance, extensibility, customization, and ease of use. Its flexible hierarchy model allows for using different data providers and creating highly interactive interfaces for display and management of large data without performance loss. New features in this release include column types. Imagine you had a column asking for a file name. Normally your user would copy and paste the file name from something like Windows Explorer into the column. Now they can actually browse the file system and select the file, and it will be displayed inside of the column. Other column types include text box column, mask box column, color column, calculator column, and much more. Also included is Excel-like filtering. This offers another way of filtering data in RadGridView by the end user. It is built in a way to mimic the standard Excel filtering functionality and offers a dialog which contains a list with distinct column values from which the end user can choose. Let's go ahead and jump into Visual Studio 2010 and take a look at some of these features. Now that we're back in Visual Studio 2010, let's begin by going File, New, Project. We'll take RAD Controls for Windows Forms. We're just going to give it a file name, and then we're going to select OK. The next thing that we're going to want to do is in the Project Configuration Wizard, we're going to just put a check on telerik.wincontrols.gridview, and we're going to hit Finish. Once this is in place, I typically like to start a new WinForms application using Telerik's RAD form. So we're going to do that. So click on Telerik, RAD Controls for WinForms, and select Add RAD Form. We don't actually care what the name is here, but we'll just leave this as RAD Form 1 and hit Add. The only quick change that we're going to need to make here is in our program.cs. And we're going to change the application.run to RAD Form 1. Now when our application starts, it'll start with our new RAD form. So now that we've added our RAD Form 1, I'm just going to double click it. That'll bring our RAD form into the designer. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to scroll down in my toolbox and I'm going to select RadGridView. Once I select RadGridView, I'm just going to drop it onto my form. After it's on my form, I'm going to select the smart tag and I'm going to select Dock in Parent Container. So now that I've added the RadGridView to my form, I'm going to add some code behind. Now we're going to switch over to our code behind page and we're going to add some code in. So I'm actually just going to select this code and I'm going to paste in some. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to generate some columns. Once we generate those columns, we're going to populate it with some data. I'm going to go over bits and pieces of this code where you understand what's happening, but the main thing to get here is the different column types and how easily it is to add them to your project. So first we start off with a random. This is just going to be used for some of our random sample data that we generate shortly. And then we have populate data. This is just going to give us a couple of rows. In this instance, we're just setting our data source to a generic list. Let's take a look now at the bindGrid method. This method is going to create multiple column types to allow us to see what has been added in this release. We begin with the decimal column. In this column, your user will enter a decimal value. You can specify how many decimal places you would like the control to have by calling the decimal places property. Next is the text box column. This will allow your user to enter a string value. Next up is the combo box column. This will allow your user to select data from a drop-down box. In this example, we are creating an array with several different values. Then we have the mask box column. This is going to allow you to set up a mask for that column. In this example, we set the mask to be a phone number. You can change the mask type easily by calling the mask type enum. The hyperlink column will allow you to add hyperlinks to a column that your user can click on and open in the default browser. The color column will allow your users to select a color from a color dialog. The calculator column will display a calculator beside your column when the user clicks on a cell. Then we get to the browse column. This is going to allow your users to browse the file system for a file, and after they select one, it enters the path into the row. Finally, we get to the checkbox column. This will allow your users to check a box to indicate true or false. Let's go ahead and run this application and see what it looks like. So now that our application is loaded, we can see here in decimal, maybe we add a 0.6 on this first one. We can see we can add text here. And then we have our lookup, which is going to allow us to select Mr., Mrs., Dr., or Mrs. Then we have our mask box. If we remove this text, we can see the mask in place. Then we have our hyperlink button, which will launch the page in a new web browser. We have colors. We could actually select the colors here and then hit OK. We have our calculator, which will allow us to perform some basic arithmetic. Next we have our browse. Once we hit browse, we can select a project. And then finally we have our checkbox, which we can toggle on and off. Let's take a look now at the Excel-like filtering that's also new in the Q3 2011 release. I'm going to scroll back up to this page, and I'm actually going to add just a little bit of code right before our initialize component. So I'm just going to add a this.radgridview.enable filtering, and I'm going to set that to true. I'm going to add a this.radgridview1.master_template.show header cell buttons, and I'm going to set this to true. And then finally, this.radgridview1master_template show filtering row to true. Now if I run this same application, you're going to see that we have Excel-like filtering. So we could filter maybe by a decimal here, and we have our normal search of all the items, but then we have available filters, and we'll just select equals here, and we'll just add in 43 and hit OK, and you can see that it brought in only the row that contained 43. We can also go back up here, we can clear the filter, and we can set other filter types that you may be used to already if you were using Excel. I want to thank you for watching What's New in RadGridView Q3 2011 release. Tune in to tv.telerik.com for more videos and check out blogs.telerik.com for the latest news and enhancements. You can also download a demo right now at telerik.com.